If you are anything like me, over the last week you have been diving into the depths of Speranza, going topside, looking for loot, and playing Ark Raiders. Well, that's at least what I've been doing, and if you have, you probably have some of the same questions that I had. What is the backstory and lore behind all of the Raiders, behind Toledo, and behind Speranza and all of the characters that we are introduced to? Well, lo and behold, the story of Ark Raiders, well, as of right now, is kind of just the beginning. As you play through the quests and missions, you are given various different things and pieces of a puzzle that we are trying to discover, and through the codex, we can piece together a backstory, what is going on right now, and a little bit of a flash as to what is going to go on in the future of Ark Raiders. By the time I beat all of the missions and saw the ending of the game, it left me with a couple of questions that I'm hoping I am able to give you the answers for. But to understand that, we first have to understand the backstory of Ark Raiders, which begins with the collapse. Little is known or documented about the world before the year 2180, which is when the collapse happened. Generations ago, devastating floods, wildfires, and earthquakes ravaged the earth and its inhabitants. Scattered societies held on through darkness and decay, and only small pockets remain which lift the shroud on the world before. Now, as these ecological disasters happened, the floods, the wildfires, the earthquakes, people scattered, but a small group started to put together a plan for escape. This is known as Exodus. See, during the collapse, a handful of what they describe as valorous survivors managed to escape the destruction into outer space, creating spaceships and giant launch pads that would be used to send a few sole survivors into the depths of space. To this day, not much is known about how this was achieved. The technology that is now on Earth is so far behind what would have been required to reach the stars. Now, after the Exodus happened, the wildfires, the earthquakes ravaged on, and the remaining people moved underground to escape. Generations of darkness ensued, but after generations, people came back to the surface of the earth, and this marked a new era, an era that is called the Sunrise. Now, settlers of an area called Toledo, which as we find out is actually what Italy used to be, moved up above ground to an area called the Alcantara Dam, where they would try to restore old tech and begin to rework the planet's ecology. Using old solar panels to power hydroponic domes to restore ecological growth, they would go through a short period of hope. And as they settled down further, putting roots into the land and the dam around this area, this is when the first wave happened. It's happened just as the world seemed to start to recover. Lethal machines started falling from the skies, and any form of stability was completely wiped out. The settlers band together, forming groups known as Raiders, learning the weak points of the machines and building extensive networks of outposts which can still be seen topside to this day. The machines were known as the Ark, or Advanced Robotic Crafts. They were also named this way for the shapes that were displayed on radar machines as they entered from outer orbit. As of right now, the Raiders can only speculate the nature of the Ark, why they came to Earth, but what we do know is that many of them are sent to harvest the world's natural resources. Which then leads to the idea that some of those who escaped earlier in the Exodus are struggling for raw materials, creating robots and sending them back to Earth to extract what resources they need. At the time of the first wave, there was one robot more powerful than any others. It was known as the Baron. It was a six-legged mechanical walker which had devastating attacks. Eventually, after years of fighting back against the Ark, it all led to one big battle, a battle of Victory Ridge. During this battle, the Raiders took high ground using all of the techniques and weak spots that they learned about the Ark. This battle took over a decade, but eventually the Raiders prevailed against the Ark, killing and destroying the last known Baron. There are still rumors that the Baron still roam the most desolate parts of the Earth, but none have been seen since the end of the first wave. So after this decade of battle and the Raiders became victorious, they continued on, progressing their technology, restoring the world world to its former glory. Several more years happened and the hope began to rise. That is when the second wave hit. The second wave, also known as the current wave, is a more advanced generation of Ark descended to the Earth. As of right now, some of the known Ark that we know include the Rocketeer, the one that flies from the sky and shoots massive explosions at raiders. Leaper, the one that jumps across entire maps and deals massive damage. Bastion, the one that seemingly never stops shooting but has weak spots in its knees. Similarly, the Bombardier has the same weak spots, but this time is going to shoot down things from the sky. Fireball, the one that sneaks up on you and breathes fire on everyone. The Wasp, the little annoying one that has a little machine gun, but not quite as annoying as the Hornet, the one that will zap you. The Snitch, being the one that will spot you. The Pop, the one that will pop you. And the Tick, the one that will grab your face. Also, there's the Queen. This one will completely and utterly destroy you. However, it's still no Baron. Now, all of these machines are significantly improved over the first wave. This wave would push humans back underground, and only the raiders would be sent topside for short periods of time. Now, it was during this second wave when Speranza was established, which was a build of subterranean infrastructure that offers mostly safe passage from underground to topside. This is where we come in as raiders. It is our job to go topside to provide for the people of Speranza and the wider community known as Toledo, which, as we mentioned, is Old Italy. Now, Speranza isn't the only settlement underground. There are others, all connected with a network of tunnels and tube, which use something known as a slingshot to get raiders from point A to point B. The tubes were originally used in the construction of the Exodus. Again, that is the spaceship used to shoot people into outer space. The tube was a transport of materials, but now mainly just transports raiders from area to area. A group known as the OTTM, or Official Toledo Tubes Management, is the one who takes care of these tubes, which for years was going around to these different communities, including Speranza, and asking for tribute in order to keep these tubes running. This is where the characters we know come in. Starting off with Celeste, she is one of the first people to move into Speranza. She was just 9 years old when that first wave hit. She is known as the pillar of the fast growth of Speranza. She is the leader of the Raiders and dreams of a world where the Raiders stop fighting each other and just band together against the Ark. And where Celeste comes in, it was for a long time believed that the Toledo Tube Management was needed for the well-being of the people. And as we mentioned, the different communities would need to pay them off, but somewhere along the line, Celeste realized something and somehow convinced the Official Toledo Tubes Management to stop charging Speranza for the use of the tubes. Rumors went wild as to whether this was some use of power, a massive gunfight led by Celeste, or whether it was some secret romance that we still don't know about to this day. What we do know is that citizens of Speranza now have free use of the tubes. The next person we have is Tian Wen. This is the weapons dealer in Speranza, who also has her fingers on the pulse of the black market. It is very clear from the very beginning when you start to get missions from her that she doesn't think very highly of you or doesn't think very highly of the Raiders, but we don't really know why. However, one day you are sent out on a mission by Celeste to investigate Victory Ridge, to discover various tactics and items that they may have used in defeating the first wave. But instead, what you find is a patch, and when you bring it back to Celeste, she confronts Tian Wen.
You got a minute?
Depends.
Come on, I have something you might want to see. One of the rookies brought it back earlier.
They found this. Up there.
Old outpost back on the ridge. Used to be half buried. There might be more in there, but I know this was your mother's squad, so I thought you should have it.
You know, coming from you, this almost feels like a trap. Still, I'll hang on to this.
As it turns out, she, like Celeste, was also a child during the first wave, and her mother, Major Ava, fell during the Battle of Victory Ridge. Tian was left devastated and alone. The legacy of her mother could keep her fed for a little while, but it doesn't take long for the next generation of Raiders to forget. This bitter lesson brought her disdain for the other raiders and explains where her kind of head's at to this day. Now, the other mystery that we kind of go throughout the several different missions revolves around Lance. He is the clinician within Speranza, and not much is known about his backstory whatsoever. However, he's seemingly some sort of humanized robot that doesn't remember his backstory whatsoever. But what's even more weird is similar robots can be found on some of the maps throughout Toledo, some of which look very similar to Lance that can be found on the Blue Gate. However, what is even more strange is he doesn't remember where he came from, what he did before the second wave. We don't know if he's a member of the Ark, but what we do know is he helps out the citizens, and some of the missions that he sends you on are trying to get him more in touch with his human side, trying to find out what type of hobbies other physicians did before the collapse, things along those lines. Now, Apollo is the engineer of Speranza, and even though he doesn't talk about it, Speranza isn't the first settlement that Apollo lived in. He claims to have lived in several of them, but doesn't tell us which ones. Now, he is one of the engineers and foremen responsible for expanding the tunnel network to future locations, the most recent of which is the Blue Gate. Now, this area serves as a gateway to the mountains, hence the name the Blue Gate. However, upon the raiders getting there, they find a downed deforester. Now, the first thing that's realized is this deforester is not taken down by the raiders, and as we find out, it is taken out by a group known as the Blue Gate Nomads. Now, not much is known about them whatsoever, but however, what we know is that they are an unknown group of survivors that were spotted around the Blue Gate, which can be recognized by their makeshift flags and decorations that aren't akin to what the raiders use. But what's even more strange is the Ark that have been taken out by the Blue Gate Nomads don't seem to make any sense, because they are completely, or at least near pristine, which means they didn't use bullets, they didn't use explosions to take out the Ark. They're using some sort of other technology to do so. And this leads us to our last survivor and person within Speranza, and that is Shawnee. Now, where Celeste seems to be in charge, Shawnee is the one that knows everything going on in Speranza. She is the eyes and ears of Speranza. She monitors the topside threats, she watches the tubes, and even the raider hatches to know everything that is going on. And in one of the missions that is given to you through Shawnee, she asks you to go around to the different locations, the spaceport, Buried City, and of course the dam, and put down LiDAR detectors. In other words, a detector used to detect movement. Now, through the several missions you are given in Ark Raiders, it is very clear at the beginning you are trying to rebuild. You are trying to reset up some of those outposts and settlements around the dam and around the several different areas. You're also in charge of getting certain tech items back to the vendors of Speranza for one reason or another. And eventually, after settling outposts, you then go in and you need to find more luxury items, things like espresso machines or books for the citizens of Speranza. And for once, there seems to be more hope. You are finding ways to take out some of the second wave, taking down some of the bigger robots. And for once, hope is starting to look up. But remember those LiDAR detectors that Shawnee asked us to place? Well, it turns out this is what goes down at the very end. And as we find out, the LiDAR detectors are picking up massive signals. Now, this could be a signal of another earthquake or something bigger, or something returning. As we mentioned, the Baron was never to be seen again after the first wave, but there was never any proof that no more were coming back. And as it turns out, based off of a little bit of intel given to us by Embark, there are some new Ark coming within November, and one of which is called the Matriarch, which to me sounds like it's even bigger than the Queen. Now, this may be the ending of the official launch of Ark Raiders, but one thing is evidently clear. It truly is only the the beginning. We have still to answer a bunch of questions. Where are the Ark coming from and who is sending them down? Where did Lance come from? And on top of that, who are these other groups of people and other settlements? We're going to be getting more locations and more story, and if you would like to see more videos just like this one with even more Ark lore, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.